Hello ladies and gentlemen and movie lovers of all kind, and welcome back to the channel. As always, I am your host, Brett Murphy, and for today's video it is going to be another ranking. And I am going to be ranking all 7 of the live-action Resident Evil movies. So Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City was released in theaters this week, giving us a fresh start for this video game movie franchise. So how does it stack up against the other 6 Paul W.S. Anderson Resident Evil films? And yes, I know he didn't direct 2 of the 6, but still he wrote and produced them, so they're his movies. And once again too, I will reiterate that I will only be including the live action movies. I know there are multiple CG animated movies out there, but I will not be including those on this list. And before we get into the actual ranking itself, I just wanted to let you all know that I have an entire playlist dedicated to all of my ranking videos. So be sure to check that out, and I guarantee you'll find something you like. And so with all that being said, let's hop right into things. Number 7. Resident Evil Afterlife. This one ends up in the last place spot for multiple reasons. The first and main one is that this is where this franchise made the full switch from all style and no substance. At least the other 3 that came before this tried to have somewhat of a story. This one relies solely on its slow-mo and 3D effects for the audience's enjoyment. I mean, really, nothing happens. The whole plot is this. Alice is trying to find what is likely the last safe haven on Earth, known as Arcadia. And then Alice somehow manages to land a plane on top of a prison with a group of survivors hiding out there. And then they stay at this prison for the vast majority of the movie. Eventually they make it to Arcadia, and surprise surprise, it's another Umbrella scam. A half-assed and CGI-filled fight takes place with Wesker, he escapes, blows up. The remaining survivors get back to the top of this boat, only to find that they have once again been surrounded by Umbrella folks. And that's it. That's the entire movie summed up in 15 seconds right there. Like I said, literally nothing happens. The score is good though, from Tom and Dandy, or Tom and Andy, or Tom and Dandy, however you pronounce it. Number 6. Resident Evil: The Final Chapter. This movie is equally as awful as the previously mentioned Afterlife, but for different reasons. And at the very least, this one has some redeeming qualities in my mind. The worst part about this movie, aside from its horrendous quick-cut choppy editing, in which you can never tell what's going on in any of the fight scenes, is the fact that this could have been such a good finale. The ending of the 5th film led us to believe that this final chapter was going to be humankind's last stand. And instead, it chooses to take place immediately after that last stand. The color palette for this movie is so washed out and dull. The story is fine, I guess, for what it is, except for its needlessly convoluted and unbelievably stupid final act, where everything from this entire franchise finally gets explained. Like I said though, there are some elements that I do like the giant hordes of zombies. I don't know why, I just think it's cool. And some of the creature design is actually pretty unique, when you can see them clearly, that is. Sadly, this mediocre franchise ended with a major whimper instead of the big bang that we were promised. Number 5. Resident Evil Retribution. And the same thing goes for this one. It's not very good at all. It falls flat and severely underwhelms for many of the same reasons that Afterlife did. It relies so heavily on the audience focusing all of their attention on the slow-mo and 3D that it hopes we forget anything resembling an interesting story or relatable characters. The only reason for me that it ends up above the previous 2 is that it actually offers up a little bit of creativity and variety, even though I know the general consensus is that this one is in fact the worst. Hear me out. It's got lots of color, brings us to various locations like Tokyo, Moscow, a suburban neighborhood, and brings back a lot of fan-favorite actors like Michelle Rodriguez, Oded Fehr, and Colin Salmon. The movie's opening sequences are actually pretty good, picking up immediately where Afterlife left off, and then transitioning to a sequence I can only imagine is trying to pay homage to Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead remake. Now, in the end, it's still a bad movie, but definitely has a lot more positives for me than the previous 2 I just mentioned. Number 4. Resident Evil Apocalypse. Now we get into the good stuff. Or at the very least, the nostalgic stuff. The early 2000s, so bad it's good kind of stuff. I like the Raccoon City setting. I like their shitty version of Nemesis. And there are actually 1 or 2 scenes that are kind of creepy and effective, like the zombie children in the school. But don't get me wrong, the vast majority of it is the so bad it's good stuff. the laughably awful CGI, the choppy early 2000s slow-mo, and the makes no sense at all action and physics. When I was younger, growing up, this was my favorite of the franchise, so I still find it to be an enjoyable and easy watch. Number 3. Resident Evil Extinction. In my mind, this is the last of the franchise that actually felt like it belonged on the big screen rather than straight to DVD bargain bin. Yes, I understand that this is the one where people who love the video games, and not Paul W.S. Anderson's twisted take on the franchise, fell off. Because this is where the last remaining resemblance of the beloved video game franchise is completely gone out the window. It's also where they first introduced Alice's telekinetic powers, and things truly went batshit crazy off the rails. I really kind of dig the Mad Max vibe they were going for though. The brief stop in Las Vegas, or what remains of it at least, is nice. I like how we lose some of the characters we actually kind of cared about and may have felt a little something when it happened. And I like how we return to the Hive and the mansion for the final act. Again, don't get me wrong though, I'm still not saying this is a good movie at all. But it does feel like the last time they really tried. It still has wooden acting, a convoluted story, cheap-looking effects, and all of the other staples of this franchise. But again, at the very least, it tries. Number 2. Resident Evil: Welcome to Raccoon City. This is sadly the closest we are ever going to get to a video game accurate Resident Evil movie. It's got certain locations and key events that they ripped straight out of the games. A few nice little bits of fan service here and there. Kaya Scodelario, or however you pronounce her name, is actually really good as Claire Redfield. There are some genuinely creepy moments sprinkled in, and the atmosphere I thought was pretty solid. However, the pacing is certainly an issue. The movie still looks and feels very cheap. All of the other characters absolutely suck besides Claire, with Leon being the standout in that department. But of the actor himself, because he's fine. He does alright with what he's given to work with. He's not the issue at all here. It is utterly and completely the writing's fault because there is nothing in this movie at all that accurately resembles Leon's character. It's a serviceable enough video game movie, and like I said, it's the one that most accurately reflects the video games that we have gotten to date. But that still doesn't make it a very good movie overall. And number 1, Resident Evil. Look, maybe it's just the nostalgia talking, but I do genuinely enjoy this movie. It is purely and simply early 2000s B-movie fun. It splices in certain elements of the games while also being its own thing. The action is cheesy and over the top, the dialogue is appropriately cringy, it's just got the right amount of everything to make it a great carefree guilty pleasure. And that's exactly what it is. No matter how many times I revisit this movie, I always have fun. It was a nice little attempt at an adaptation for its time, and it still holds all of the charm that it released with. So that is all for today's video, folks. Be sure to let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree with my ranking. And while you're at it, feel free to let me know what you'd like to see me rank next. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. And if you'd like to see more content, consider subscribing to my channel and ringing that little bell icon. That way you can be notified about all of my latest uploads. And as always, stay safe. Thank you so much for watching. And that's a wrap. Hey you, yeah you, if you made it this far, just know I appreciate you, and while you're here, consider hitting that subscribe button.